Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes. I'm a professor who has worked very hard to provide context to what's going on in Ukraine. I've, at this point, done more than 400, I think 450 videos since the war began. I started doing this in about June, July, something along those lines. And so I've been tracking daily what's been going on. One of the things that I've found troubling over time is just how people absorb the lies that are in Russian propaganda and they just make them culturally mainstream. Here, I'm going to show you Redacted. Redacted is a video vlogging something about what's going on in the world. Much of it is about Ukraine, not all of it. This is Clayton Morris, this gentleman here. He was on Fox News in the morning shows, like the Fox and Friends or early Fox and Friends. But he's one of the people that is working hard to spread these kinds of lies. And so I'm going to watch this. I watched little clips of this. You can see that the bars here. I haven't watched the whole thing. I watched the first couple moments of it, and I thought, wow, there should be a video about it. Let me skip forward, let me skip forward, let me skip forward. And as I did that, I said, yeah, let me watch this in real time and kind of give you a sense of what's going on. And I'll answer his objections. Of course, he doesn't give any facts. Neither will I, but I'll explain things along the way. So here we go. This is just a pure reaction to whatever he is saying. So here we go. The theme is they want Ukraine destroyed and Putin is ready. Okay, here we go.
All right, let's get to your top story today, and I have a question for you. I want to kick this off with a question. Is the United States doing anything it can right now to torpedo peace talks between Russia and Ukraine?
Notice the assumption embedded in what he's talking about. If you watch Redacted, I want you to consider what I say as I react to what he has to say. Just give me a fair hearing. I would appreciate it. You might see some things that you weren't seeing before.
I'll just answer it for you. The answer is yes.
Why? Why do you think the United States would be doing that? Now, again, if you answer the pre-packaged propaganda pieces from Russia, it'll make sense, but it might not be the true answer. So a coherent worldview answers all the big questions logically, but it might not be true, even if it can answer things logically.
Just look what happened over the past 48 hours. Chinese President Xi Jinping in Moscow in talks with Vladimir Putin. They spoke for about 4 hours yesterday. Talks continue today. And one of the things they're laying out is a 12-point plan. Chinese 12-point plan for peace in Ukraine.
Including giving away the territory that was Ukraine's, that Russia has grabbed and now has claimed for itself. So if you're willing to swallow that, you might have a peace plan, at least temporarily, until Russia can rearm and take more. That's the way that Ukraine's going to see it. So it's not scuttling peace, it's scuttling a peace that can't possibly last.
And Putin is on board with this plan. We already know.
Of course he's on board with it. Why wouldn't he be on board with it? He can break into Ukraine's house, take their stuff, and then declare peace. You can't do anything. We're all done.
They're already open to it. They've publicly said this. So they're sort of working on the peace agreement with Ukraine. And then what's the U.S. and NATO response to this? This is the response. NATO considering deployment of up to 300,000 troops on the...
What? Ukraine is going to have policemen after their house has been broken into? Huh, how about that? What a novel idea. It's almost insane to my mind that this is somehow a bad thing to show force to a bully who only understands force. No other thing is going to work with Putin.
Border with Russia. NATO announces they're putting 300,000 troops on high alert, and according to Politico, ready to send them to eastern Ukraine with Russia. I don't know, did you guys sign up for this? Here's the quote from Politico. Politico writes that NATO military leaders are to submit updated regional defense plans. Alliance officials are putting forward the idea that its borders with Russia should be guarded by up to 300,000 troops, the news outlet reports. Not just like...
But that's not the same as sending them to Ukraine. That's sending them to the Baltic states and Poland and otherwise. It's not sending them into Ukraine. Like, he's making a logical leap. Please see that. Even if you disagree with me, please see that.
On alert. No, you're going there. You will guard this territory.
Where? What territory? Poland, Norway, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. You know, if the Russians wanted to run into Finland right now, there's really nothing stopping them.
Right. It's not just something you're going to talk about. We will send you there. It's noted that the first echelon of NATO troops may consist of about 100,000 troops, which are already deployed in Europe. So if you think, well, how are they going to get 300 there? Well, they already have 100,000 ready to go in Europe already. And this would be just another 2,000 on top of that. Go ahead, David.
That's bad math, but okay.
So what you're saying is they're going to put soldiers on the border of Russia in all the NATO countries, but then there's going to be this long void in Ukraine?
Yeah, right. Well, so that's why they'll fast track Ukraine NATO membership, right? Now they're a member.
They can't actually fast track NATO membership. NATO membership can only come when there's no ongoing conflict within your border. So they have to wait until the war is over, and then they will move through that. So he doesn't know what he's talking about with that.
Right, now they're a member. And by the way, can we just stop with the charade? Like, I was thinking about this today. Maybe we need to take a stand. I remember growing up, I was listening to a radio station, and the radio DJ just went on the air and he said, look, I'm never going to play another Milli Vanilli song. It was something like that. Like, he just took a stand. It was kind of a funny moment, right? So the radio station was like, we're done. We're never playing this, again.
You want Redacted to not play any more Milli Vanilli?
I want us to never play Milli Vanilli on this show again. No, what I want us to do is...
So what he's assuming is that what is being said in the Western press is a charade, somewhat like Milli Vanilli lip-syncing to the music, but that's not actually what's going on. But he's connecting this in such a way that it's making it even more so seem like a charade. Do you see that?
Stop pretending that Ukraine has an army anymore.
What? Ukraine has an army. I was just over here with, where is it? Ukraine has 60,000 troops ready for a counteroffensive. They do have an army. They have a workable army. They have actually what's one of the strongest armies in the world right now, and cutting-edge, battle-tested armies in the world right now for its size.
Stop pretending that when we hear about these attacks in Crimea overnight, which we did, and attacks on rail infrastructure in Crimea, that Ukraine is doing it. Let's all just say from now on out, it's NATO. It's NATO and it's the United.
Okay, he's half right and he's half wrong. Ukraine is doing it. They're getting U.S. intelligence. So they're being very, or maybe not U.S. intelligence, NATO intelligence, which may be U.S. satellites or something along those lines. They're getting, help with identifying targets, but Ukraine is doing the firing. So if that's what he means, it's not what he means. If that's what he means, then I can see what he's saying. But that's not what he means. He thinks that there's NATO boots on the ground that are doing all the firing, that's not it.
United States.
We are sort of
these attacks.
In the spirit of not misgendering.
Right.
We are no longer going to misnationalize.
Right.
This army.
Ukraine.
That is a misstatement, and it is misguided, and I don't know why they're saying that when they don't have any actual proof that that is what is going on. But you can say something all day long without proof, and so what? Now, the misery here is that they have 1.82 million followers or subscribers to this channel, and it looks like 315,000 have already watched this nonsense. That's the misery here. Okay, let me continue.
Ukraine doesn't have an army anymore, so
they do. To keep repeating that Ukraine doesn't have an army is a lie. It's just simply a lie.
They're carrying out precision attacks on rail targets inside of Crimea, on missile depots, like
with NATO satellite geolocation. Yes.
Give me a break. No one is buying.
They don't even know how to work the rep.
Actually, a lot of people understand this. I mean, if you watch the other side's media, if you read carefully vetted, legitimate news sources, you will find that's the case. What he's articulating are the kinds of things that you will see again and again in Pravda and RT and other Russian state media.
Weapons.
Right. And they want F-16s that we're going to send them. They don't have an air force.
Well, actually, they're starting to build an air force. Slovakia is sending them stuff. One other country is sending them stuff. They're starting to get it, and they already have a few planes. Not much, but they're building.
It's just a charade at this point. So
it's not, but he can keep repeating it and making it sound like it is, but he's not offering any definitive proof. Are you seeing that he's not offering any proof? He's just saying this?
I'm done with it. I'm not going to say it anymore. From now on out, it's not Ukraine attack this. It's NATO and the United States attack this.
No, that's not true. NATO and the United States have been offering support, satellite geolocation and all those kinds of things, but it's not NATO doing that.
That's what we're doing on this show from now on.
Okay.
So China is in Russia right now talking peace. Let's end this war in Ukraine. That's what they want. Here is the United States response. Again, not just the troops, but here is the other response, which is send them more weapons. Biden administration announced yesterday that we are going to send in Ukraine this, more weapons. At the same moment they're talking peace, here it is, 300.
Okay, so this is terrible. At the same moment that they're talking peace, they're sending weapons. They're just trying to inflame it. No. They're not talking about real peace in any meaningful way that the Ukrainians can swallow. So this is just utter nonsense to be framing it in that way. But to be sending these arms to arm the Ukrainians so they can defend themselves, that's a legitimate thing. Now, he's taking this and showing this article, and this is the first thing that I agree with that he said. This is actually happening. They are sending these things, but it's not to overturn peace, to keep at a fight, to just overturn order. It's not for that. It's to arm the Ukrainians to fight the aggressors who are on their land.
$100 million new weapons package for Ukraine. Ammunition for HIMARS, 155 millimeter artillery rounds, which we can't even produce anymore and make quickly enough, as Colonel Douglas McGregor has pointed out on our show.
Notice who he's citing, Colonel Douglas McGregor. Douglas McGregor and Scott Ritter are the two worst commentators who are most pro-Russia and in their pocket. Go to RT, type in Douglas McGregor or type in Scott Ritter, and you'll see them come up again and again, dozens or hundreds of times. Tucker Carlson, same way.
Show, like, where are we going to get this stuff from? Right? All of this, grenade launchers, demolition munitions, and equipment for obstacle clearing, mine clearing equipment. Get it on there. This is in addition this is part of the $450 billion aid bill from that Congress already pulled in December. So they've already allocated this money, more weapons.
Is that removing the mines that they themselves planted?
Good question.
Like the ones in the Black Sea. Yeah.
Right, because Russia...
Yeah, and they did plant mines in the Black Sea in order to keep the Russians from getting close to their land. There's nothing wrong with that, nothing foul about that. That's different than what the Russians have mined as they retreated and in order to blow up as many Ukrainians as they could in what it amounts to a genocidal approach to the Ukrainian population. So, not cool.
Russia didn't do that. Like, Russia's running into Ukraine, planting mines, then leaving?
Right. Yeah, there was also video this week we saw of Ukrainians planting mines on their own dead soldiers.
Now, I can't speak to this. I haven't seen it. My gut tells me this is going to be something that is coming from Russian Telegram channels or something along those lines, but I don't know, so I'm ignorant and I can't speak to that, so I'm going to give this one a pass.
Saw a video of that this week, so maybe they have to go through and actually clear out their own dead soldiers that are now filled with mines on top of that, and do that as part of the mine clearing operation.
I mean, the rhetoric between the two leaders, President Xi Jinping and President Putin, is NATO aggression. They continue to use this as the reason that they need to.
Okay. As I'm hearing them talk, I'm thinking redacted ought to be redacted. If you just showed the facts of, we spent 5 minutes on this video so far. Very little facts, lots of speculation, lots of assertion, but the level of facts was very small. And I agreed with the facts of here's what they've supplied, right? But that's about it. And the rest is worldview. How are you seeing the world through Russian talking points? Are you seeing the world through kind of Western eyes of, well, Russia has gone into their neighbor's territory and has seized this land. Now, why they did it, that's the worldview question. And I'm going to let them talk again.
To make an alliance. And this is proving them right. So there's no way around it. This talking point of NATO aggression continues to be validated.
Yeah.
Okay, so NATO aggression by encroaching on Russia, right? I mean, that's the talking point. Okay, how many countries have voluntarily joined NATO after the Soviet Union collapsed? All that have joined voluntarily. Now, let me ask you this question. How many countries voluntarily joined the Warsaw Pact? 0. It was Russian aggression, or Soviet aggression in that time, making them come under their sway. It was not something that was voluntary. So NATO, as they've encroached, it's only because they were fleeing to the safety of the West from Russian aggression, which you are seeing play out in Ukraine right now.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So 300,000 troops, more money and more weapons the very same day. It's like you're giving them literal verbal ammunition, right?
Yes.
Well, and I agree with what he's saying, because the Russian propaganda machine is going to absolutely use that in order to make their case in RT and Pravda and other sources. They're going to say, we want peace, but they want peace that's not really peace that Ukraine can agree with. If you really wanted peace, you could give back those territories and walk away, and it would be over. I mean, that would be the end of the war.
And add on all of that, at the same time they're talking peace in Russia, add on top of that Tony Blinken yesterday, Secretary of State, making this announcement about China's peace initiative. Watch.
And a ceasefire now, without a durable solution, would allow President Putin to rest and refit his troops, and then restart the war at a time more advantageous to Russia. The world should not be fooled by any tactical move by Russia, supported by China or any other country, to freeze the war on its own terms. Such a move would violate the UN Charter and defy the will of 141 countries who have condemned Russia's war in the United Nations.
He's right. I mean, I have nothing wrong to say with what Blinken is saying. You don't let them rest up so they can come back more energized.
General Assembly.
Yeah.
Now, wouldn't that, they can rest up and be stronger argument also cut both ways? Because Ukraine
It would, but Ukraine has the momentum and they want to keep the momentum.
is not winning. And so
She just said Ukraine is not winning. So again, they add assertion on top of assertion on top of assertion. By what criterion are you saying that Ukraine's not winning? That's really the question.
if there were any ceasefire, it could also, by that logic, work to the advantage of the West, to make the weapons they no longer have, to rest the troops.
Okay, they keep talking about the weapons that the West no longer has. The West is depleting the resources, but so is Russia. Russia's depleting their resources at a much higher rate than the West is depleting their resources. So, for example, at one point, I remember even writing this down, Russia was firing 50,000 shells per day. 50,000 shells per day, while Ukraine was firing 7,000. You can only go on so long doing that. And so it's a race to the bottom to see who can run out, who can maintain longer while the other runs out. So that's actually what's going on.
To resupply the ground force.
Right.
So, someone should call them out on the fact that, yes, that's what he's saying. It's total bullshit, and it's almost the exact same sentence that John Kirby said over the weekend on Face the Nation.
Oh, the exact same phrasing. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
So, yes, we call out that it's bullshit. But also, if we're just going to be a member of the press and follow the logic for an exercise in futility, you should say, wouldn't Ukraine also get to rest? Wouldn't people get to stop dying for a little bit?
Yeah, but you got to remember, Ukraine has the momentum. They don't want to allow Russia to rest. Now, at the same time, while they don't want Russia to rest, Putin is ordering his troops forward, whether they are ready or not, because he wants some kind of win.
Wouldn't that be advantageous?
And I'm not making that up. You can go look at the map and see other commentators. This is what's happening.
Right. So don't fall for it, is what he's saying. Don't fall for this propaganda.
They can't rest.
Look, they're talking about propaganda, but what are they grounding this in?
Because they're going to get stronger. But by that logic, the other team gets stronger too. I mean, I know how the World Series works.
What's up? Right, exactly.
But this isn't the World Series. When you have momentum and morale, you want to keep pressing your advantage. You don't want to allow it to shift gears and the momentum to shift and go the other direction.
Day off. Well, now there's a chance that you could actually get your pitcher, the good starting pitcher, back again.
Right.
You get that extra day off thanks to rain. Wow, this changes everything in the
So
World Series.
only one side rests in a ceasefire, and the other side gets to pretend they're in that gun.
This is an absolutely useless argument. This is silly.
The whole movie?
Well, and it's ridiculous because what he's saying is we would go back. The idea is we want to go back to pre-war lines, right? Eastern Ukraine, Donbass goes back to being Ukrainian, and you can continue to kill all the people in the Donbass with continued shelling and carry out your genocide, which you've been doing for 9 years.
He's talking about Ukraine doing that to people in the Donbass rather than what Russia has done when they illegally invaded Ukraine in 2014. This is Russian propaganda talking points. I'm telling you, just go look at RT and you will hear the same thing. RT.com. Look it up. If you can't get through it to RT, you can go to rumble.com and look up RT and then go through it that way. You'll see it.
Continue that, right? That's the goal of the United States, is to move those lines back again. They had a chance to do that. They had a chance to do that back when we were having peace talks and Turkey was laying out that plan. At that point, those territorial lines were still intact. But then the United States, of course, and Britain stepped in and torpedoed that whole peace talk. So here's their second chance at torpedoing peace talks. That's exactly what they're doing. And now they've lost more territory. So if they can...
Okay, so when Russia was trying to saber rattle and say that he wanted concessions when he was at the border and saying you can never be part of NATO and some other concessions about what your laws have to be, Russia's another country. It has no right to say what Ukraine can or cannot do. But that's what he's going back to. The same Moscow's propaganda points is the same stuff that you've heard again and again from them. It's echoing through Clayton Morris's mouth right here.
Continue this. The next stage is going to be the capture of Kiev, right? The capital of Ukraine. And then it's game over, and then there's no territory left at all to be talking about.
Which the Western media has told you the war has been in Kiev all along, and it hasn't been. They pretended that it was in the center of the country, and then the New York Times ran pieces saying, look, they're kind of back last summer.
Right.
Yeah, and they were trying to capture Kyiv, and they didn't capture Kyiv, and they got outside to the suburbs, about 20 kilometers outside Kyiv, but never actually penetrated into the city. Now, they also have bombed them repeatedly with missiles again and again, trying to destroy their critical infrastructure in Kyiv, but they're saying like, oh, yeah, they're making this up. It's not like that at all. There are air raid sirens regularly in Kyiv because of that. And when I was talking to a Ukrainian friend, across the entire nation, you'll hear these air raid sirens when something's on its way, so that people, because they don't know exactly where these bombs are going. So there's a reason for that.
Phase are back open. The ground force has not come there. The attack has not come there yet.
They were not able to get there.
Time it comes there is when President Biden yeah, exactly. You were on the same wavelength. The only time that the war is there is when President Biden showed up a few weeks ago. Suddenly there were air raid sirens.
When Angelina Jolie...
Oh my gosh. That's a conspiracy theory. Oh, it's just for show for when President Biden was there. No. I was talking to someone doing a video with a friend from Ukraine, and he was in Lviv, and he had air raid sirens going off while we were talking. He was in a cafe, and hey, you hear that? It was air raid sirens because that happens. This is not just for show with Biden. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Jolie was there. They had her running through as well, through the city, out of a cafe and that
Sean
kind of
Penn,
thing.
Yeah, fake, yeah, all that stuff. So, just for some context here, the United States, so we understand what we're talking about here, the U.S. pushed for the death and destruction of Ukraine, using Ukraine as a proxy the entire time.
That's a Russian talking point. The Russians love to say that the Americans will fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. They love saying that kind of thing. It's a very common talking point. And I'm sorry that if you're still watching me, I'm sorry that this has to be this painful, that you have to put up with this nonsense. But you need to understand what is being said on the other side.
The goal is the total collapse of Ukraine, so that...
No, it's not. The goal is to support a democracy that has been violated by its authoritarian neighbor.
NATO will use the land as a proxy for Russian containment.
Which would basically make Ukraine an aircraft carrier.
Which is exactly what Putin has said. He said this again and again. That is Russian talking point.
Yes,
for its war with the East.
That's all they want. Case closed. The U.S. doesn't give a shit about the Ukrainian people. If it did, then it wouldn't have provoked a war with Russia. And more context on that, the Pentagon runs 46
Okay, did you hear him say they wouldn't have provoked a war with Russia? The U.S. did not provoke the war with Russia. Russia provoked the war with Ukraine, came into Ukraine in both 2014 and again in 2022, unprovoked by Ukraine. Ukraine was not in any way militarily or otherwise threatening Russia, except for being a kind of working democracy on their border.
Biolabs in Ukraine. George Soros.
He just said biolabs. Biolabs in Ukraine, another Russian talking point. Where are they? Prove them. Show us where they are.
BlackRock now own most of the land in Ukraine.
Oh my gosh.
The United States used Ukraine to test out and roll out the first digital ID system that is now trackable and controlled by the government. Microsoft now runs all of Ukraine's government on its servers. The U.S. owns Ukraine from soup to nuts, and there are some nuts that we own now.
And the nuts are talking right now on this channel.
That country.
I'm sorry, that was impolite of me. I just can't help myself. It really irritates me that he's making all these assertions without showing evidence, and all these assertions are simply Russian talking points.
Total destruction of Ukraine has been the plan. And using Ukrainians was always the plan in order for us to take full control.
Okay, so this is the element of what a conspiracy theory is. If you look up how a conspiracy theory works, you say that these guys in some back room somewhere were planning this thing, and this is how they did it, and it's smoke and mirrors, and it's not really what. No, this is a conspiracy. Look up how conspiracy theories work, and you'll hear it in what he's saying.
All of this country. Remember Congressman Adam Schiff explaining this plan. Watch.
The United States aids Ukraine and her people so that we can fight Russia over there and we don't have to fight Russia here.
Exactly. So we've known all along.
Yeah, so it doesn't come to our soil. We don't want to have to deal with it. I don't understand how that is. So I heard what he said, but I don't have any issue with we're arming them so that they can defend themselves so that we don't have to get embroiled in a third world war. I mean, it's that simple.
Are fighting Russia. That's the plan. We'll use Ukraine as a proxy so that we fight Russia in that way. And as you mentioned, John Kirby.
But he's making it sound as if what we're doing is actually provoking, starting, intentionally doing this. Look, if Russia didn't spill over the border in Ukraine, nothing would be going on now. It's them going over Ukraine's border that caused this.
Yeah, saying the exact same thing this weekend. So as we're talking about peace, and John Kirby comes out and says that we can't have this ceasefire. It's unacceptable. Any example of this is unacceptable.
But why is it unacceptable? Just because we just want to kill Russians? And that's probably what his point's going to be. I don't know. I'm just saying. But that's not it. It's unacceptable because they still they still occupy about a fifth of Ukrainian soil. That's not okay.
And let's listen to John Kirby. This is what he said in case you missed it. Listen.
That if coming out of this meeting, there's some sort of call for a ceasefire. Well, that's just going to be unacceptable because all that's going to do, Mike, is ratify Russia's conquest to date. All that's going to do is give Mr. Putin more time to refit, retrain, reman, and try to plan for renewed offensives at a time of his choosing.
That's exactly right. And Putin is not the only one that's doing this. Xi is watching to see how this works. And if you let a bully get away with something, they go and do more. Hitler said that he would have stopped if he was checked at the Sudetenland, but he wasn't, and he rolled on to Poland and elsewhere.
We hope, and we've said this before, that President Xi will call and talk to President Zelensky because we believe the Chinese need to get the Ukrainian perspective here.
But that is the plan for Xi Jinping to meet with Ukraine after this summit.
Right.
And what then is the talking point, given that Ukraine is behaving like the battered spouse of the United States? Just won't leave them even though they're the ones taking the hits.
Right.
Battered spouse of the United States. Battered spouse of Russia. Look, here, I honestly can't believe that she just said that. Like, what's actually happened when these countries have fled to NATO, it's like the battered spouse of the Soviet Union, these countries, Poland and Romania and all these other countries, have fled from a wife abuser or girlfriend abuser or whatever to the arms of the football team, like ran to the biggest, baddest guy that they could find and say, please protect me. And they're like, sure, you come on in. You're with us now, right? That's what's happened. It's not that NATO's encroaching on their border. It's that these countries have been dominated by either the Soviets or dominated by Moscow in whichever form, right? And now they're fleeing and trying to get away. They're not battered by the United States. On what planet is that the case? But in Russian propaganda talking points, that makes sense.
How can China talk them into reason?
Well, accordingly, I mean, we the same thing that happened last time, right? Is that the United States and Britain sent convoys to Kiev when they were having peace talks with Russia last
Yes,
time.
we know this.
Right? So they're doing the exact same thing again. So they're like prepping them, like, don't under any circumstances take whatever China gives you. Like, we got this.
So the answer is the U.S. just wants war, is what they're trying to communicate here. That's not what's going on.
I mean, we've got this. We're going to send 300,000 troops. We're going to send you more money. We've got this. We control you, by the way. All of that money that you keep getting from us will dry up. It will go away if you move any further with peace talks with Russia.
I don't think that they need to worry about that. The Ukrainians would not allow this. The Ukrainian people will not tolerate the Russians there.
Going to end. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Right, so my question is, what kind of carrot does China have to get them to stop behaving in this way? That
That's
sort
a
of
great
likes the abuse
To
from the
Ukraine.
battered
Yeah.
Can I
spouse
ask
that
a
just
question?
will not
Again,
Yeah.
Are these other places as dependent on Chinese products as we are? Like, are they dependent on trade and TVs and electronics and stuff as much as we are, that they could use that?
Well, I don't know that. I mean, everyone is dependent on that, but I don't know what Ukraine.
And China is also dependent on trade with the West, and they do not want to lose that, which is why China has not been supplying Russia any weapons.
Import infrastructure looks like. We certainly know what their export infrastructure looks like. We know that the most important part of their land and territory, the 92% of goods and farmland, is now under control of Russia in eastern Ukraine. The most fertile land in the world is now under control of Russia, and the manufacturing corridor.
And the mines.
Mm-hmm.
The
minerals,
the
exactly.
resource mines.
So those are now under control of Russia and East.
Stolen by Russia. Let's get it straight. Another country has gone across the border and stolen this from a sovereign state. That's what's happened
In Ukraine. So what's left of Ukraine is not that attractive. And once Russia decides to move further and continues to takes Odessa and takes any sort of port entry, then there's nothing left.
And that's what they were planning to do in the first few weeks. When you go back and see the documents that laid out what the invasion plan was supposed to be, they were supposed to take Odessa, and then they're right on the border of Moldova, which has Transnistria there, and now you're into World War III, as it's not just invading Ukraine, it's invading multiple countries, and this is what we're trying to stop. If you're still listening to me and your mindset is about pro-Russia and you like Redacted and you're listening to this and you've heard anything that I said, please understand, I'm not trying to start World War III. I'm trying to show you this is how to prevent World War III, not how to start it.
What would you want with that? So I don't. That's a great question. I don't know what they get from China from an import perspective that makes it interesting for them. Go ahead, Philip.
What I want to know, so you got John Kirby and all these politicians talking about this, but what is the narrative end game? So, because they're saying we're going to defend Ukraine, but if they're saying there is no peace, so it's if we push Russia all the way back, well then don't they just get to rest and then do it again if we ever leave? So it's is it that we just completely take over and then we're right on Russia's border, or is it that we destroy Russia? Because
it's
as long as Russia exists, as long as Russia exists, then that's still there. But why isn't that part of the narrative? So their narrative stops short of an end game.
Yeah.
They don't mention what the goal is.
Well, that's not entirely true. Zelensky said to push every Russian off his border, so that is the end game. Would regime change be there? I'm sure a lot of people would like regime change, but that's not the goal. And it was never the goal before they invaded. Once they invaded, then things changed, and you have to factor that in. If you're looking at this side of the coin, you got to look at that side of the coin too.
Well, the goal,
you are
they will
not
never say
supposed
it.
to think about
They're
that.
not going to say it. Although Lindsey Graham has said it, it's regime change. They want Putin gone, right? They want a destabilized Russia.
When was he calling for regime change? Before or after the invasion? See, that's the trick. If you're calling for it and calling for it and calling for it for a decade, that's a different thing than if you're calling for it after they've invaded and have violated their neighbors and have caused hundreds of thousands of deaths.
The strength now of China and Russia as a hegemony is terrifying to the West. It's terrifying to the United States more perhaps than anything. That's why you're seeing even Europe basically. I want to just play this clip because I think this is not play it, read it, because it talks about Europe right now in a way. And Europe is really sort of identifying itself now with this idea of peace, saying, quietly, let's have this peace because we're being.
Yeah, there is some fractional view within Europe. There's a punish Putin camp and then there's a pro-peace camp within Europe. But that split has always been there. It's not a now thing like he's trying to show you that it is, as if it's a recent phenomenon.
Screwed by the United States, blowing up our pipeline, energy crisis. So the United States wants regime change. That's the endgame narrative, I think. Here's Walt Zlauto. He's the president of the Western Peace Coalition, writing a great piece in antiwar.com today. He writes this: a year ago, when NATO member Turkey neared a 15-point negotiated settlement, the US and the UK each sent a top official to Kiev not to request, but to demand that Ukraine President Zelensky walk away to keep fighting. That grotesque demand led to over 100,000 unnecessary Ukrainian.
Okay, if you can believe that this guy who is only about this jaded view about peace, if you can believe that that's the case, I don't think that that's what's going on. I think what's actually going on is that the Ukrainians are asking for weapons to fight. It's not that they can't because they're somehow under the control of, as a puppet of the United States or whoever. It's that they're asking for to be armed so that they can push the invaders off their land.
Deaths over the next year. A third of the Ukraine economy vanished, 6 million left Ukraine, and another 6 million have been relocated.
Because of Russian aggression.
Well, now we know the numbers are closer to 300,000 Ukrainian men and boys killed in war, thanks to the...
That number I've not heard before, and I would love to see him cite and prove that that's actually it. And not cite with Russian propaganda points, but cite with some group that is someone we can all trust.
United States. So it's over. And the past 24 hours, we've seen Xi and Putin meeting for 4 hours over.
I agree with Pooh.
This 12-part peace plan. Then you have Walt Zlauto saying, once again, I want to quote directly from his piece. He says, once again, it's not about ending a war, destroying Ukraine as a functioning state. And God forbid peace be brokered by our other arch enemy, China, in America's 21st century Cold War that could quickly go nuclear. Outside of the United States and Australia, the rest of the world is cheering on China's peace efforts. Even European NATO countries are likely those silently on board. They're not thrilled about the U.S. blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline.
Okay, so whoever he's citing here, let's talk about this. Outside the U.S. and Australia, the rest of the world, that's not true. Most of the free world is on the side of Ukraine. As far as U.S. blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, not yet proven. Could be an outside state actor, not a government agency. Might be, I don't know. None of us actually know who did that.
Tripling their energy costs to degrade Russia. By preventing a March 2022 peace agreement, the U.S. blew a chance for an agreement that would have reverted to the pre-invasion territorial lines. An easily prevented year of war means any new agreement will likely see the annexation of the Donbas provinces and the Ukrainian oblasts of Kherson and Zaporizhia. Once again, the U.S. has overplayed its hand, ensuring we don't stumble into nuclear war, the utter ruin of Ukraine, and the demise of U.S. unipolar dominance. Ouch.
That U.S. unipolar dominance. This is pervasive in Russian propaganda. Putin always talks about how he wants a multipolar world, somewhat like what the Soviet Union was to America, as a counterbalance, because he doesn't like the unipolar world, which he talks about, where the U.S.-led Western nations have kind of a say in the international order that he just doesn't seem to like because he wants to colonize his neighbors.
Also, I mean, and so I think we can really wrap it up by saying this point that, yes, absolutely, the goal for the United States is regime change. They don't want peace at any measure, and they will torpedo any peace talks that come out of this. It totally weakens their hand and shows how weak the U.S. led hegemony is right now.
Yeah.
If he's ever out, the U.S.-led hegemony, that's right out of RT. If he's ever out of work, he can just get a job writing for RT because he's already saying exactly the same kind of things that they want to hear.
In this move.
And it's just so easy for blowhards like that to go on television and say that we don't accept peace at this point, because when it's not their family members who are risking their lives. So, it's sort of disconnecting us from the fact that we are all humans, that these are families sending people to die, and that peace talk.
She's right about the empathy for families, but she's got it all wrong about who the aggressor is and who the victim is.
Talks would stop that and curb the bleeding now.
Meanwhile,
it makes sense why. I was going to say, it just makes sense why people always draw the parallel to Rome, because Rome had a very powerful military, and they were so confident that military was going to overtake the world, and they fell economically. So it's like, that's where we are. I mean, we're crumbling economically right now, but we still have the gall to think that we have the military might to sustain it.
Yeah,
it's an interesting time, right? When the United States is not really able to stand for much.
So let's talk about that financially. Many countries are in a financial hole, and this situation is only getting it worse. But what happens if you don't address it and you let Putin go on and do this? And then Xi gets the idea that it's a good idea to take Taiwan, and in Iran they clamped, and whatever else. This could get a whole lot worse, and that's why you need to address it now.
In terms of its own fundamentals, like politicians going to jail, financial system collapsing, yet trying to make the case of a dominant world order. So it's a really pivotal time right now.
Backed by a U.S. dollar, right? Yeah.
Right.
Here, take this. It's like a carnival barker, trying to get you to come in and see the bearded lady or something. It's like, come on up, step right up, come in and see the show. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also...
Mercifully, they will not cover.
So come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.
So that was Redacted, and I need you to understand that what he was espousing was Russian propaganda points. He backed it up with very few facts and cherry-picked facts and put them in such a way. I mean, the facts, I agree with the facts that he showed, that how much we're spending, or John Kirby. Now the analysis is completely different, but he chose particular facts to bolster his claim, but he didn't show facts that underpinned his assumptions. He was just assuming that things were true, which were essentially Russian talking points. If you don't believe me, please hear me. Go to RT.com and read Russian state media perspectives, and you will see that. Okay, thank you for your time. If you want to hear the other side of this equation, my channel has 450 some odd videos that have covered the war since about midsummer, just daily telling you here's what's going on the ground. I try to triangulate on news in order to understand what's going on, like legitimate news sources to understand what's going on, and I don't cherry pick facts. I try to make clear what's going on with that. Thank you for being the kind of person that was open-minded enough to listen to this and try to see both sides of the equation. If this was helpful to you, please like, please subscribe, please consider sharing this with someone who needs to hear it.